Stuck CD player.
Oh, no, sorry. Ask the Hosts, episode 7. I'm Joe.
I'm Chris.
I'm Gary.
And I'm Dalton. Wait, haven't I heard this before?
Yes, hello, chaps. Let's pretend that this is a different show entirely. So the idea is very simple. You send us in questions and we answer them. The catch is that they can be about anything you like except for Linux and open source. You can send them in to show@askthehost.com. If you're a patron, you could have been listening to this 2 weeks ago. So thank you, everyone who does support us there. You can find details at askthehost.com/support. The first question then is from Dave. What's the best Windows version of all time?
8.1.
XP.
2000.
Windows ME, I'm going to say that no, that's clearly the worst version. No, 7 is clearly the best version because that improved upon XP and was before the 8 catastrophe.
No, it's clearly Windows 2000 because Windows 2000 is Windows XP without all of the bloated Teletubby Land plastic-looking shite theme.
Oh, you're one of those people. I've never met one.
Windows XP is the last one I remember that was just always zippy. Always. Zip, 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 super fast. I kept a VM around for ages of it as well. I did literally a bare metal to VM conversion, and then I kept that VM. It's fast, it didn't annoy me, and it was my daily operating system, and I didn't feel the need to rage quit until the Windows 7 era and switch over to Linux.
Okay, but when did you get into Windows XP? Because when it came out, pre-Service Pack 1 and everything, the hardware was not ready for it, as far as I've found, and it also wasn't very good.
Yeah, Service Pack 1. So I had Windows 98, and then I got a machine with Windows XP Service Pack 1. So yes, that's probably the caveat to my love for it.
Hang on, Dalton, weren't you shitting yourself and screaming when XP came out?
Yes, but you see, I watch videos from very odd people like Cathode Ray Dude and Lazy Game Reviews.
Right, so you vicariously know about XP in the early days then?
Yes, I'm also a huge nerd.
Because my question to you would be, if 8.1 is seriously your favorite, I only experienced 8, and it is the one which was the most anger-inducing out of any Windows version I tried, because they tried to turn a laptop into a tablet. The whole Metro UI, I just couldn't bear it.
Yeah, and like they had their apps where you open it and it just immediately full screened and stuff. It was just a nightmare. But you could install Classic Shell on it to make it not too bad. But the fact that you had to install that is not a good sign.
Absolutely. And I still do install stuff like that on Windows 11 even, because I don't like the way the start menu is now. But the thing with 8.1 was that, for one, it put the start button back. But when I was just getting into being seriously handed an IT environment, 8.1 was out. 7 was looking long in the tooth by that point. And for the computer labs that I was dealing with, 8.1 with Classic Shell installed was far more performant than 7, and the management tools that Microsoft put into it were far better than those that were in 7. So, from my point of view, I deployed the entire environment, staff, students, faculty, on 8.1, and no one noticed, for one, and it was just basically a better experience for everyone all around.
See, I didn't install Classic Shell or any of that stuff when I was forced to use a Windows 8.1 machine when I was working for an MSP. And I think it informed the way that I use a computer now, in that I hit the Windows key and I type what I want and I hit enter. Never before had I really done that. Like even in Windows 7, I had stuff pinned to the taskbar and everything else. But Windows 8.1, because the start menu screen, whatever you call it, thing was so terrible, I just got so used to hit the Windows key, type Word, hit enter. And that's still what I do now.
Simon asks, is there an image or scene from a film that still comes back to haunt you and you wish you could unsee?
For me, it has to still be the original Japanese Ringu the first Ring film, when Sadako comes out of the TV. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it now because I watched it when I was young enough to be really scared by it. I watched it alone at home on DVD, and I was so shocked when that moment happened. It was terrifying. And I finished watching the film with no one else there. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not joking. The landline telephone fucking rang. I am not joking. And nobody knew that I was watching it. Like, this is not like I was WhatsApping people through the film like I might be now. I just was at home. I watched it on my own. I didn't tell anyone I was watching it. And the landline phone rung. And I genuinely nearly shit myself.
Well, did you pick it up?
No, of course not. But yes, my wife's really into horror films, and I watch them, and they're always the same thing. Ooh, creep, creaky chair, jump scare. Oh, look, I found these old box of videotapes. And then a nun comes out with sharp teeth, and that is the only thing that's genuinely scared me and still scares me when I think about it.
I'm not a huge film buff, so I'm just going to say the entire film, Human Centipede. I just wish I'd never watched the film. Enough said.
Yeah, I've seen I say all three. I'm sure there's probably about 50 of them by now, but I saw the first three, and yeah, they're all just grim.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Never again.
I wouldn't say it comes back to haunt me, but yeah, I probably could have done without seeing that filth.
Yeah, well, that's why I preface this with I'm not a huge film buff. I think it probably takes my wife about 3 days to watch film because I just don't have the attention span. But yeah, that film, it was a waste of my time. I wish I'd never done it.
I saw The Human Centipede 2 in the middle of an all-night Fright Fest movie marathon, and the friend I was with genuinely had to leave the cinema to vomit.
Well, for me, it's not really something that still comes back to haunt me, but it did come back to haunt me, and that was Nightmare on Elm Street. And I watched that when I was very young, let's just say. And I don't know what my parents were thinking, leaving it around for me to watch or whatever, or allowing me to. I can't remember, but somehow I watched it. And the only sort of visual hallucination I've ever had in my life was I thought I saw Freddy Krueger standing there on my landing for a split second and then looked again and he'd gone. And that was how disturbed I was by that film when I was a little kid. I mean, I watched all RoboCop and Terminator and everything when I was little, but they didn't really affect me. But there was something about Freddy Krueger that just freaked me out, and I could have really done without seeing that, I think.
Man, I'm really trying to rack my brain on this. The thing is that I'm kind of just a wimp, so I don't watch a lot of horror, and I never really have, because it's just like, no, I don't enjoy that experience. It's not fun for me. It's not enjoyable, so I just don't. Things that have come back to haunt me. I mean, I recently watched Akira. That one's weird. That's a weird film, but I wouldn't say that it comes back to haunt me. Things that come back to haunt me are more things I'm like, ugh, I really wish I hadn't watched that because it was bad.
Well, my friend made me watch a movie called Itchy the Killer once, and there's a bit in it where someone gets split in half down the middle. Well, I think he gets a really sharp sword and just goes down him, and then he just slowly splits in half. And that stuck with me. I wouldn't say it's haunted me, but it's like a bit grim.
It's funny you mentioned being a kid, Joe, because when I was very small, someone showed me Michael Jackson's Thriller video. And the logic of me being a small child was that if the light was on and I was in a room with the door shut, then nothing could get me. And I distinctly remember a bit in that film where they do that exact thing. They shut the door, turn on the light, and there's a pause. And this, I'm talking about in the full-length Scorsese music video with the song, but also the kind of narrative bits.
And does Michael Jackson come in and say, yeah, you're coming to bed, lads?
Yeah. One of the monsters goes under the door and comes up the other side, is my memory. Maybe that doesn't even happen. But for weeks afterwards, I could not sleep. It caused my parents so much grief because they used to leave the light on and I would go to sleep with the light on. But that wasn't enough now. I was like, no, they can still get me. They're going to come up through the floor.
Stefan asks, have you ever dabbled in boink /folding at home /settee at home? What are your thoughts on distributed computing? Hang on, isn't BOINC open source? Should we not be talking about this? Should we just delete this question?
Well, you already asked it, and we're all here, so what are we going to do? Get all dressed up with nowhere to go?
Yeah. All right. So what are our thoughts on that kind of thing where you just leave your computer idling, doing distributed computing for the greater good? For me, my thoughts are I have an electricity bill to pay, so I'm not going to be doing that. Sorry.
So I've dabbled with this a few times over the years. The first time I dabbled with it was on my work PC, which very quickly got me found out because my laptop was screaming when my boss came in the next morning because it had been doing folding at home all night. But hey, it was a decent ThinkPad with an NVIDIA GPU, and I thought I'd make use of it, particularly when I wasn't paying the power bill, as you said, Joe.
You should have just said, no, it was Windows Update.
Yeah, Windows Update on my Linux ThinkPad, honest. But I have dabbled with it a few times at home outside of that. So during COVID, I ran a couple of those 1 litre PCs doing folding at home for a few weeks. I've done it a few times since, but broadly it comes down to there are other ways in which I would rather donate to charity that gets them more money than my crappy little home server and its spare CPU cycles ever could. Like, I'm never going to be able to do something like gift aid with my home server and its CPU cycles. So I think there are probably more efficient ways for the planet and for my wallet and for the charity to get something from me than me doing folding at home.
I tend to agree. A lot of servers outside of our homes are far more efficient than our computers at home could ever be at a lot of these tasks. And they don't have to work as hard getting things uploaded and downloaded. I'm of the opinion that I don't do it myself, but the numbers are cool. I like looking at the numbers going up when I do.
What we need to do is outlaw all this AI bullshit and just repurpose those computers for stuff like folding at home instead. Problem solved.
That's what I was going to say. I don't really know much about it. I remember reading about folding at home and that you can run it on a Raspberry Pi, right? I mean, you're basically doing nothing, but in theory you could, or an old phone, I think someone even ran it on. But from my perspective now, the workloads surely are going to be pushed into NVIDIA's grand plan for everything to be run on CUDA cores. And that is going to be the fastest and most effective way to do it. But again, I'm speaking from a position of ignorance about these specific things. So I'm happy to be corrected if I'm wrong. But my perspective on looking at MPI running multiple GPU nodes, that's where research and iteration happens quickly and at the cutting edge. So maybe one day that stuff will all get bled in, but it depends how far this advancement continues. But it's never something I've actually run or looked into deeply.
Yeah, I mean, for context, the 2 machines that I had running it during COVID were both 6th gen i7s. So they weren't any slouches, particularly 3 or 4 years ago. But they were just processing so little in terms of work units that it barely seemed worth it to do me.
Chris asks, what does everyone do to stay active? Sit in front of the computer.
Oh, wow. Thanks, Chris. It's not me that asked this, by the way.
No, it's a different Chris. Do any of you do any sort of exercise ever?
Yes, I do, because I'm a lard ass and need to get some.
What is it then? Come on.
Oh.
Is it Zumba?
Is it yoga?
Is it line dancing?
I can't believe I'm going to out myself on this. You ever heard of a game called Ring Fit Adventure?
Ring Fit Adventure? I mean,
Oh
in Britain,
my
that
God.
might lead down a dark alley.
This is where we all furiously Google Ring Fit Adventure.
Is it a bit like Dance Dance Revolution?
It is not. So the Wii Fit games for the Wii were obviously very popular, and the balance board was a very popular accessory. And Nintendo said, what if we did that, but we actually didn't do that again? And so they gave you a Pilates ring and a leg strap to attach the other controller to. So it knows when your leg is moving, and you have a Pilates ring that you can push or pull or turn, whatever. There's gyroscopes and everything.
So yoga then?
Not entirely. It has aerobics and stuff in it, too. and just body weight training.
Have you considered leaving the house and going to a real Pilates class?
Yeah, you didn't think that, like, outside, maybe? No, let's get computers involved.
Most of the time, I go for walks in local trails, but it's cold half the year here, and we're entering that period now. I have too much social anxiety to go to an actual gym, so that's out.
Dalton, this is brilliant because, of course, I've gone to Google and searched Google Images for what this is. There's a series of cartoon avatars with flames coming out of their head or looking like they're taking a big shit with a really grimacing face.
It is truly a delightful game because whereas Wii Fit and its sequel were just fitness games, it's actually more of a fitness game, which is an interesting take that I don't think anyone's really done before. So I give it props for that.
Would you consider yourself now ring fit?
No.
Gary, I know that you like to walk as much as possible between hotels and offices and stuff. Is that about the extent of your exercise then?
Yeah, I mean, unless you count walking downstairs to get coffee, then absolutely. It's about the extent of it. I try and walk places where I can. I should probably do more exercise, particularly since I've gotten married and had a kid. The amount of exercise I do has fallen off of a cliff. When I was younger, I used to cycle a lot. Like I'd cycle 12, 15 miles a day, which felt like a lot at the time. But now I look at what people like Graham do and feel slightly ashamed of myself. Yeah, mostly just walking places. Like I try and walk a couple of miles a day, but a bit like Dalton, it's cold and rainy now. So before this show, I needed to go to the supermarket. And to be honest, even though the supermarket's only a 20-minute walk away, I just got in the car. Bit too lazy.
I try and walk every other day for at least a couple of hours. And I should walk more briskly and get more out of breath, but I can't be bothered to do that most of the time. So I just amble along for a couple of hours and say, yes, that's excellent exercise. I'm doing brilliant work there. And that's the extent of it. I did try lifting for a while and I did bulk up a bit, but then I stopped and then I bulked up the other way because I basically kept eating loads and got enormously fat.
Actually, it's a good point. I do lift. I move the stack of laptops around the room all the time. Yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah. I do as well, actually.
Laptop Fit Adventure is going to be a new product on the market soon. Okay, this episode is sponsored. I had a period where I was running every morning at 7 o'clock. I would run 5 kilometers. I wasn't breaking any records, but it was a very regular thing. And once we had kids, I just completely fell out of the habit. I mean, I push my very heavy daughter a lot and it's tiring, but the idea of actual exercise has just completely gone out of the window since I became a parent. And for a while I did play football as well, but I would go in goal, which is the laziest position on the field. You jump about a bit every few minutes, but otherwise you get to stand around shouting at people, which suited me just fine. But yeah, I mean, I really should exercise as well, but especially it's the weather thing as well. The last thing I want to do is add extra physical activity into my week, but I should.
So here's a corollary. Do any of you have fitness trackers?
No, I've tried wearing a smartwatch and tracking my steps and stuff, but it's not very accurate. And then it just annoys me and the permissions I have to give it and stuff are really annoying. So no, I've not done any of that nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
I have the Pixel Watch 2 and it vibrates occasionally to tell me that it thinks I'm stressed, but that's about the extent of tracking that it does.
You're right. If you just shut up.
I used to track the running. I used to strap my phone on with an armband and then I'd use that for music, but then I would track the run, which helped you to gamify it a little bit. And I was doing what they call HIIT, high impact intensity training, or fartlek, which is a rather amusing Scandinavian name for it. So what footballers are really into it. It's sort of like the bleep tests. You do very short bursts of very high intensity with recovery jogging, and it's supposed to be better for cardio. And I had various audio tracks that would take you through that as well. And you say about lifting, I distinctly remember I had some dumbbells and I got into it for a while and I got some muscles. I didn't use them for ages. And I thought, I'll get back into it. So I picked out a circuit training sheet, basically, that I was doing when I was in better physical condition. And I followed the whole thing through with the same number of reps for every position. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's fine. It was a bit stiff. And I'm not joking. I woke up the next morning and I could not move my arms. It was so bad. Like, I was honestly thinking about going to see the GP. Like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, it was stuck next to I couldn't move them because I'd strained. It was the tricep dips that I did with way too much weight on.
Yeah, but it's worth it for the sick gains, bro.